Hey guys, and welcome to the video. We're going to be discussing Taika Waititi, the director of Thor Love and Thunder, and his response to criticism about the movie. So let's dive into this Marvel movie news. But before we get started, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and stay up to date with all the movie news we have going on around here, guys. So guys, we're going to take a look at this Bounding into Comics article. Thor Love and Thunder director Taika Waititi pushes back against film's critics. Quote, "If you want it to be exactly like the comic, read the comic." So yeah, guys, you can see how this can be considered as kind of a cop-out response to criticisms to his film of Thor Love and Thunder. You can see why people could kind of be annoyed by the director making this comment, that only people were just complaining that the fact that the movie wasn't like the comics, but that wasn't the only criticism. A lot of people felt that the movie leant too far into the silliness, didn't take itself too seriously, and that the overall quality of the Thor movie kind of wasn't where it should be. But let's read in, guys, and see what it has to say. So apparently still unable to accept that his attempts to subvert audience expectations with the Golden Avengers' fourth solo film completely missed the mark, director Taika Waititi has attempted to deflect the near-universal criticisms Thor Love and Thunder's quality by painting those unhappy with his work as comic purists, whose only complaints are that the film is not exactly like the comics. Yeah, but that wasn't the only complaint. There was a lot of complaints about, like I was saying, guys, the fact that it just lent too far into the humor and it was just a bit on the ridiculous side. And the tone was kind of all over the place, and people just kind of, you're a bit like meh on the kind of movie. And I kind of have the same sentiment. It just wasn't where I expected a Thor movie to be. I felt it was a bit too silly. The humor was a bit ridiculous. And yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on it anyway. The man who hollowed out the God of Thunder's cinematic incarnation pushed back against his critics. While speaking in reflection of the film's production for the Thor Love and Thunder, the official movie special book, per a transcript of the relevant section provided by comicbookmovie.com, Waititi began by admitting that he found it very difficult to nail down the film's tone, as he was torn between the incessant need to add his tired brand of humor to everything and the gravity of Jane Foster's cancer-based storyline. Yeah, you can see how those two kind of tones in the same movie could be very jarring to kind of try and make them work. Someone's suffering from a cancer and having that as a storyline, and then him wanting to inject a load of humor into it as well, and kind of blending those two storylines together can be a tricky line to tread. So I can see it from his perspective. So, quote, "It's an ongoing battle because I want my films to be entertaining," said the director, "and I want a lot of humor in them. To poke fun at not only the idea of a space Viking, but also to poke fun at humans, how we bumble our way through life on this planet. The comic run is very serious, and Jane's story is especially tense," he continued, "and so to try to find humor around that stuff, as well as making it an emotional story, was always going to be difficult. And we struggled with that," he added. "We wrestled with it throughout the edit, right up until we finished the film." Waititi explained, "We did funny scenes about the cancer, we did way more tragic scenes about having cancer. Some audiences really loved the humor part of it, some audiences really wanted it to be just like the comics. To this end," the upcoming Star Wars director concluded, quote, "But I always say, if you want it to be exactly like the comics, read the comic. You've got to change things here and there to make a film." Yeah, I completely understand his sentiment with what he's saying here, guys. I've said it numerous times in numerous videos now, that when you adapt a medium such as, a video game or a book or a comic into a movie is a different art form. It's a different medium from a comic or a game or a novel, and you have to change things in order for the story to work properly. Like, you can't just adapt a book one for one into a movie, because there's certain things that just don't translate well to on screen. Like comic books, you can't translate the costumes sometimes of a comic book into a movie because the costumes would look ridiculous. That's just an example that I'm giving. So you can't always do a one-for-one translation. Different mediums, different art forms, you kind of have to switch it up in order for it to flow, for it to make sense. And you have to remember that when you're making a film, you have to make it for the casual audience as well, that hasn't necessarily read the comic book. So you have to bear that in mind as well, guys. So, notably, Waititi's entire framing of the criticism against his film is disingenuous at best and an outright dodging of accountability at best. The film's abysmal reputation was not born from the fact that it's a comic. Sorry, let me start that again. The film's abysmal reputation was not born from the fact that it's not comic book accurate, but rather that it's just terrible. Yeah, this is what I've heard, guys. Just a lot of criticism about people just not enjoying the film in general. Like they said, the story wasn't very good. That the villain was kind of lacking where it should have been. Obviously, having Christian Bale in there, he's a phenomenal actor, and apparently his role just wasn't as good as what it should have been. Wasn't written very well, and it was just kind of a lackluster movie all around, and people just weren't happy with it. As seen in the near universal praise of such MCU entries as Captain America: The Winter Soldier, Spider-Man: No Way Home, and most notably Guardians of the Galaxy, fans are entirely open to divergent takes on their classic characters. Yeah, absolutely. So if the script is written well and the movie is written well and it, services kind of the characters and the story, then people don't care if it changes up from the comics. I mean, if you look at Civil War, the Civil War movie was completely different to what the comic book was. There was so many things that were changed up in it, but people didn't care because it was a great movie. For example, you've got things like, like the Harry Potter movies, for example. They didn't follow the books one for one, but people didn't really care so much because the movies were so great. The fact that they changed, the books slightly, same with the Lord of the Rings franchise. They took a lot of liberties in the movies where they didn't translate the books one for one, but obviously there were the people that kind of did complain about it, but the majority of the audience didn't care because, the films were written so well. So when you have a good script and a good movie, people don't care if the translation from the comic to the screen is accurate or not. As long as the movie's written well, that's all people care about. So, however, the key to doing so is remaining respectful to the original incarnations, not throwing tomatoes at everything that made the respective character in the first place. Well, yeah, that's the thing. Like, I agree that you have to change things up when you're adapting a comic book to a movie, but you do have to keep certain core features of a character that made that character what it was in the first place. If you change up too much, then you're basically just creating a new character, but still calling it Thor. So you have to keep the core elements of what the character was in the comic books. So Star-Lord may be far more goofy in the MCU than in the comics, but he still retains his natural heroism and leadership abilities, as well as his dislike of any and all authority figures, and thus still able to endear himself to fans of the original incarnation, including those who had been following the character ever since his debut in 1976 Marvel's Preview Volume 1, issue number 4. When viewers are gearing up to watch a Thor movie, they want to see a movie about a noble but sometimes brash Norse god who is trying his best to both earn his future place as king of Asgard and protect the humans of Midgard. What they don't want to see is an eternally immature child continually having his character undermined by seemingly endless stream of new allies who are better than him at everything that makes him special. Jane is more adept to her wielding Mjolnir, Valkyrie is stronger a leader, and New Asgard's youths need no training when it comes to using the very same powers Thor has spent his entire life lovingly proving to himself worthy of. Yeah, so this is the thing, isn't it? Obviously Thor's the main character, and it seems like they've just undermined him at every single aspect. I can see why people would feel like that, absolutely. And like Thor, he's a Norse god, and for him to be in this kind of ridiculous humor, silly movie, it kind of does undermine his character and how great he is. I mean, if you look at the first Thor movie, look how different that is in tone to what Thor Thor: Love and Thunder was. Yeah, I just feel that the tone was just completely off for the Love and Thunder movie. Furthermore, Waititi's claims that audiences have wanted the film to be more accurate to its source material is, to say the least, absurd. While it's true that there is a contingent of more modern comic book fans who are eager to see Jason Aaron's performatively girl boss take on Thor's legacy in live action, what Waititi fails to mention is that this run is never universally panned by Marvel fans across the board. Absolutely. If anything, upon learning this abysmal arc would be adapted to the silver screen, many fans hoped, admittedly, against hope itself, that the MCU would actually improve upon it and turn it into something less than embarrassing. Unfortunately, as we know, this was not the case. In the end, fans were instead left with what may be one of, if not the worst entry in the entire franchise. Yeah, it could possibly be the case, guys. Obviously, you had Thor: The Dark World. A lot of people think that could be the worst one, but it's up for debate. Obviously, each of these movies hit people differently, so you could argue as to which one's the worst. But it just seems like this is just a case of what's happening with Marvel at the moment. Obviously, they're on a decline in their quality of films. Not only their films, but obviously their Disney Plus shows are not so hot at the moment. They've had a bit of a rough record with their Disney Plus shows. And it's a shame about this Thor movie because he's such a great, interesting character and there's so many things you could do with it. And to have a a lackluster movie like Thor, Love and Thunder, and just going too far into the silly and just, not delivering as the way it should. But yeah, guys, let me know what you think about this article. Do you agree with the comments that the director has come out and said it's just basically because people feel that the movie wasn't accurate to the comics? Do you think that it's correct in what he was saying? Or do you think that the other criticisms, which I've mentioned, are kind of more to the point of why the movie didn't do so well and people didn't enjoy it? I'd love to know what you think, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon.